It says go. And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of Jawin with Jack. I'm the Jack you're looking for. I knew you couldn't resist me. You had to come back for some more. And with me this week, I have the two gentlemen, Nemo and Rykus, of the Ashtabula Hobby Talk channel on YouTube. And they're here. Both of them are veteran gamers, so of course we're going to be talking about some tabletop RPG stuff. But there is a wealth of activities. Only the two most prominent of which I know about are ham radio and amateur radio operation, and also, well, not really even a hobby, but running a comic book store. So strap yourselves in. It's going to be a lot of excitement and a great conversation. We already were just going pretty strong before the camera even started rolling. So you guys are joining us midstream. How's everybody doing tonight? Don't forget to drop your questions in the chat here. I am going to put the chat on the stream so we can see. That way we can talk to people and everything, and you guys don't have to have a separate chat window out there, and I'll read out questions as I see them. Good evening. All right. Yeah. Let's start with introductions. Nemo and Rykus, tell me about who you are and what you do and why you do it.
Good. I'm Rykus, and I've been a long-time comic book collector and fanatic of anything collectability, like action figures and, games.
Don't you mean dolls? Isn't that just dolls?
Oh, man. Don't get me started with that. Sounds like a Mallrat episode there. But, I was doing conventions for a while, and I just progressed to the next step is I owned a brick and mortar 4 years ago.
We were just talking about that, and that is amazing to hear, because I was thinking, wait a minute, 2021, that's like smack dab and lockdowns on the heel of COVID. That's the kind of adventurous spirit I have to respect, Rykus. What was it like? Why did it, you were talking about, but it seemed like the right time for you for a variety of circumstances, but tell me how you even had the chutzpah, the idea to buy and own a comic book shop, which is, it's like one of those things that everybody thinks they want to do.
Right.
Well, would you slap those people?
I mean, I'd say follow your dreams. I'm not going to want to say your dreams. I mean, it's been my dream to I had three passions in my life: movies, comics, and music. Mm-hmm. And I already conquered two of those, and comic books was like the next thing in there. So I wanted to do something with comic books. I was doing conventions. I was like getting a good following, and there's a good repertoire with that. And I just didn't fit in very well with the comic book community. I was trying to involve myself in the conventions. I was like trying to fit in there and like, hey, we should do a convention, because the convention that was locally died down. And I was trying to gather up all the people together, and they just it came together, but they pushed me out, and I wasn't part of that anymore. And I was like, I want something of my own centered around comic books, and conventions just wasn't cutting it, and comic book store it was.
I can see that. How has the experience of owning a comic book shop, now that you're 4 years deep, how has the real experience been different than what you imagined it was going to be like?
Well, I imagined more kids coming into the comic shop. I was planning on it. I wanted a bike rack in the front of the store. I was going to have, special for kids on Fridays and all this stuff. It was really cool. But only adults came in, and people my age, and it was a shock to me, because I was expecting something different. I'm okay with the adults coming in, but I wanted to give back to the community of what the experience I had as a kid, riding my bike up to the comic book store, mowing lawns, and doing everything I can around the neighborhood to muster up whatever cash I can to buy that one extra copy of title I was reading,
Well, and if I show my age a little bit, I'll mention that. Well, I used to also buy comic books. You used to find them at the corner store, like the 7-Eleven or some such. The comic books were much more widely available when we were kids, when we were younger.
Right.
What do you?
That's how I got the bug bit, because I went to a convenience store and I picked up a Superman comic, and my parents put me in the corner because they were going out with a couple of their friends, and I read my comic book. They bought it for me to keep me out of their way, and they were having a good old time drinking and whatever. I had my good old time reading the comic book, and the next month they did it again, and I had like 3 consecutive issues of Superman, and I didn't know the stories kind of continued into each other, and that's what got me hooked. And like, I want the next copy. I want the next copy.
Right. I need to know what happens next in the story. I remember that similar feeling of thinking, oh my God, Spider-Man's been going for years. He's older than I am, and there's all these issues that have happened. There's a story that's been going on. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's an amazing thing, and it really opens yourself to an imaginary, expansive world. And I also always loved that notion of the crossover. It says Spider-Man and Captain America are in the same universe. Took a
For
little
sure.
while to figure out why Batman wasn't in there and you couldn't mix them for some reason. That took some figuring out on my part. But I feel like that same appeal of that crossover of universes is something that has appealed to me in the gaming and the role-playing game circle.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. For me though, the newsstand was Mad magazines. I wasn't so much on the comic book end of it.
What
Mad
was it that
Magazine
drew you to
was
Mad? That's like a hobby unto itself. Why Mad instead of comic books?
Yeah, it was more the skit comics inside of it. You know, the spy versus spy, and like so they would have the themes. You know, where they were like they'd print the cover as a dollar bill that you could fold over that would change into goofy stuff. Or my favorite one was the scratch and sniff one that everything smelled like newsprint.
They had a charming sense of humor in that magazine.
Yeah, yeah.
And now, in what form does Mad Magazine even exist these days? Is that
Still a
something?
magazine.
It's still a magazine. That's wow. Well, I got to give them respect, whatever the quality of the publication may have it be. I'm sure it's been up and down, and who knows what it is now. But you know, having the temerity to continue to print an actual physical magazine these days is respectable, in my opinion.
Yep.
It's tough. It's a tough market.
Yes, Dan, chutzpah. It's a Yiddish word. It's part of me. Velma recently just got me a copy of the Toon role playing game, and I was reading that, and one of the stats is chutzpah.
I've always wanted to play that.
Oh well, it's funny you mentioned that because we'll be talking about that more, and it's a really interesting game. I posted threw a picture of it up on the social media thing, and I got a lot more bigger response than I expected from it. It's a much beloved game from many circles. A lot of people had funny stories to share about it too. So now, Nemo, you have been working for several years now as working in the amateur radio world, and that's something I know very little about. Do you tell me about that? Like, what even drew you into that in the first place?
Well, okay, so before we met, I used to be big into CB radio, and I knew a bunch of
Well, you're
people.
talking about it back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I used to have a CB radio in my car, but then everybody got cell phones, and it wasn't such a big deal anymore. And and back then, the testing requirements were such that I didn't feel like I wanted to go through that process.
Okay.
That fast forward to where we are now, about 4 years ago, I decided when I hit my next birthday, and maybe I shouldn't say what it was, but when I hit 50, I'm going to go ahead and get it. And it's not that it's like a signature old man hobby or anything like that, but I just figured it was time, and I started getting into it. So I went and I tested, and I got the technician class license. And before I knew it, I was forming a radio club up here, and were pulling people from all corners of the county together, and now we're a 501c3 charity, and we're raising funds to go help other people become amateur radio operators. Very specifically, we're raising funds to help PTSD veterans who, because I've had many in my life that I've known that were, Iraq war veterans or whatever, that couldn't bring themselves to go outside, but still needed the outreach, still needed the social networking of some kind, and weren't into Facebooking or Xing or whatever it is that they're calling it now. So, but they all know comms. They all have used a radio, and so our thought was, we pull this together, we can sponsor veterans and get them trained up to pass the test, because it's not that hard to test to become at least a technician. And
Okay.
and then they can get on the air and they can talk to people and participate. And we raise money to get them the gear and get them set up, and we go and install the gear for them and teach them how to use it.
It's kind of neat. Hearing you talk about it that way makes me think it's like CB was the original social media practically, because that was people all over the world talking to one another directly without phone lines or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, amateur radio and CB have kind of come up together, and there's a big headbutting thing between amateur radio and CB guys. Our radio club has been trying to bridge the gap between that too, because
could you split that hair for me? What is the distinction between amateur radio and CB? I would have made the mistake of thinking they're the same thing. Well, or overlapping sufficiently, basically the same thing. Go ahead.
So there's some of it is all right. So back in the early 70s, up until the early 70s ish, you had to have a license for both. Your FCC issues you a call sign. You have to take a test. I don't remember if you actually had to take a test for CB or not. I don't think so, but it was more like GRMS now, or GMRS now, where you just pay the license once, I think, and then that's good for 10 years or however long the term is. But then CB went public, and just anybody could use it. The restrictions were still there. It had to be 5 watts. It had to be considered local. Although it's AM sideband, you're going to get skipped. You could still talk to people around the world by accident, much like 10 meter is today. 10 meter band does kind of the same thing, because they're in the same wavelength, almost, not quite. So the CB guys consider themselves a little more free. There's not as much regulation. When I was involved in CB, there was still a lot of respecting the channels on CB. CB is channelized, so only certain the channels represent certain frequencies on the band, and there are frequencies in between there, but they're not. They're stuck on the channels. Whereas if you look at 10 meter side, we have the entire kind of 10 meter band that we can play with without being channelized to specific spots in that frequency.
Right. So it's implying that on the CB side, it's like channel 1 is for this specific purpose, channel 2 is for this specific purpose.
Right. Like in this part of the country, channel 19 was, east-west bound highway traffic. Channel 17 was north-southbound highway traffic.
Okay.
Local people used to use, like channel 16 or 13 or whatever. Channel 9 was considered an emergency channel, and it was actually when I got into CB radio, it was still monitored by all the emergency services guys. So the highway patrol, park rangers, things like that would actually monitor channel 9. You weren't allowed to transmit on that frequency because it was considered an emergency frequency, unless something happened, like, oh, I saw a car accident, or we needed a tow truck or something along those lines. then you could pick up and call out on that frequency. And I did have to do that a few times back in the day when it was like that.
Given the advent of technology, is that still the case? Are there still channels reserved for?
No, there's nobody cares on CB anymore because it's not regulated. It's just free band.
Okay. Because I was just thinking, it's an interesting segue to comment that you're doing radio, you're doing amateur radio, but I have caught your YouTube streams where you're doing radio on YouTube. It's an interesting juxtaposition of the two media that like social media plus the radio itself.
There's a lot of guys that do POTA activations, Parks on the Air activations, and they'll YouTube their streams. There's a couple of guys in our club that do that. There's some guys that just bag call signs out of their house and YouTube stream it. And you could catch those guys all over. There's people all over the world that do that. But the big difference is regulation versus non-regulation, kind of between CB and amateur radio. That's sort of where the big headbutting kind of comes into play, I guess. I actually have a guy who does CB pretty regularly, and we're probably going to try and get him on the show here and kind of do some back and forth on that, maybe in a month or so.
I was about to ask, is Andrew Ham up here one of your buddies?
Andrew Ham is actually our line producer for our show.
Oh, welcome, Andrew. Glad to have you.
He's homesick today. He couldn't come into the studio with us, but he is also an extra class radio technician or an extra class radio operator. So he's got some good insight there too if he's spitting it out. I can't read anything that's coming up on the screen. It's too far away. Oh, look at that.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, actually, Rykus has got the little gadget there. Where there's a gadget, there is a way.
Yeah.
I have an app for that. Can't see? Got an app. Is it AM or FM? Technically, Dan is asking.
Amateur radio is both. We can do both AM and FM depending on where we are in the bands. And now even CB can do FM too. So newer CB radios are coming out FM mode and single sideband mode. For us, like on the 10 meter band, we can do 10 meter FM. 2 meters FM, right? Yeah, 2 meters FM. 440 is UHF, but so it depends on what we're doing and where we are.
I'm nodding along as if I know, but I don't. Please continue. Yeah. Oh, of course, naturally.
Yeah. So, I've been hanging around Nemo for a while now, and it still seems kind of.
Again, it depends on where we're. So we're doing like walkie-talkie type stuff. That's generally speaking FM, right? So like the little radios you buy at Walmart that are like FRS, channelized FRS radios. Those are all FM. If we're talking to somebody in South America, we're doing that on AM sideband usually.
Yeah. From what I recall hearing, I have listened to a bit of Art Bell over the years, and he would say that with the shortwave radios, particularly, you could talk to anybody anywhere because of how far it transmit. And I know AM is kind of the same way, but that's why the signal tends to be a lot more staticky in my experience on the AM channels.
Not necessarily. It depends.
Does that really depend on your antenna, I imagine?
Yeah. Antenna, the power of the other person. There's a lot there. You learn a lot of math and theory, magnetic theory, math, all that kind of stuff.
Math. No wonder it's dying off.
Yeah.
Reading. Nobody reads anymore. There's all these things going by on the side. I don't pay attention to that. I need an app that'll read them out loud for me.
I don't have one of those yet.
Yeah, I'm marking. I've gone far enough that I talk to the computer sometimes, and it creeps even me out while I'm doing it. But it's really neat at times. Like talking with Grok is a bit of a trip.
Yeah. You like Grok, huh?
Yeah, just out of general things. I've tried a couple different ones, dabbled in them, and Grok is the one I've just gotten the most used to, I think.
Gotcha. I actually just started dabbling in GPT just about 2 or 3 months back, and up until then, I was like, no.
Yeah, I want nothing to do with it. But yeah. For better or worse, it looks like it's here to stay. I see no reason to think it's going to go away anytime soon. So I'm like, might as well get used to it and see what it can do. But it's interesting because I do, as particularly in the little gaming circles I'm in, I know some people. I know one guy who's published a game completely using AI generated art and layout. That like he did everything through AI. He wrote the rules himself. But there's another guy who does all his own artwork, but he is vehemently against AI. He does not. He thinks it's crap. He says he can always tell when it's AI, and it's always inferior to what a human can do. Even bad human artists are better than the best AI, as far as he's concerned. Well, he's never said that. I'm putting words in his mouth, but he's a friend of mine, so I can do that. Hi, John, if you end up seeing this. But that's been my experience with just in that generative AI world, just dabbling with it to the degree that I do. But back to the radio world, I wanted to get finish up with that. Is that one of those things that, like we were just talking about some certain other hobbies, to appearances, would seem like it's dying off, but actually more people are doing it than ever? What are the numbers like in the radio hobby?
Okay, so depending on what kind of numbers you're looking at, and who you're talking to. So if you go by, the ARRL, or American Radio Relay League, which is the lobbying arm for amateur radio operators,
Okay.
they're kind of like the NRA of amateur radio. So their main job is to protect the open. So the radio spectrum is public. The FCC licenses the radio spectrums to private companies for use in the public interest. The ARRL is supposed to be the organization that checks the FCC, so to speak, to make sure that that's what they're doing. That's kind of the best way I can describe it. So
the way you phrase it makes me think they don't always succeed at that mission.
well, they do. Okay, I'm not the biggest fan of the ARRL, but lately they've been actually pushing some really good initiatives forward, and I won't drag the whole conversation around with that. But I think if they keep going the way they're going, they'll actually start getting noticed by more amateur radio operators. Because I actually think our numbers are going up. They're right around 700,000 across the country, maybe a little more. But I actually think those numbers are more because nobody keeps formal track of those numbers. And what they do keep track of is the membership to the lobbying groups. And if you look at other countries like the UK, India, just the UK and India, for example, off the top of my head, countries in South America or South Africa, the number of amateur radio operators that join those lobbying groups is going up. Our numbers here are going down, but our bands are getting fuller because there's more people on them. So how is that? So is the numbers going down, or is there people just not caring and joining the lobbying group? You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a ton of kids out there that are doing digital only modes over the waves that have never even heard of or don't care about the ARRL. So I actually believe our numbers are increasing in general, and not falling behind, but it because it's not being recognized by the older groups that have been around for a while, those numbers aren't being seen correctly. That's just my opinion, but I think I'm right.
We had this discussion on our show too about the younger generation getting involved in the.
Yeah,
I noticed Andrew is speaking some Greek in here. I wonder if you could translate. ARRL recently got the FCC to drop the data rate on HF, so now we're just limited by the bandwidth. Older data modes took up more bandwidth, but newer ones don't. So the ARRL helped strike it down. He said, and then he clarifies, drop the data rate limit. I meant. It's amazing. I know what all of those words mean, but I have no idea what that sentence means.
All right, so let me clarify some of that, and so that you kind of get a better understanding. So if you're think about it in old school modem terms, right? So you're old enough to remember the old 14.4 modem.
Yeah.
Okay, so 14.4 modem. We were actually limited to much less, but we'll say a 14.4 modem. Then you have DSLs, or we'll just say V90s, right? So then you had the V90 modem. So now you the ability to do V90 modem, but you were regulated to 14.4 because the regulation didn't keep up with what was going on out there. Now they've limited our so they were limiting us to a baud rate of data transmission. Now that's gone, and there are other things that they're doing too that are really, really good. Like they're currently petitioning the Congress and Senate to pass bills that ban HOAs from creating. Basically, what's happening with the HOA communities is the HOAs say you're not allowed to put up any kind of antenna. You can make all kinds of antennas. You can make an antenna that looks like a flagpole. You could wire if you've got the right tuner. You could wire your radio to your gutter on your house or your siding and use that as an antenna. Right. But that would be against HOA policies. So the ARRL does have initiatives going for that. To stop the HOAs from making that happen. The FCC regulations say that the HOAs are supposed to make accommodations for us because we are also part of the National Emergency Services Network. When for instance, when the hurricane ripped through South Carolina or North Carolina and Tennessee last year, it was amateur radio operators before Elon Musk got there, before Starlink got there, before they started dropping satellite dishes on the ground. It was amateur radio operators on donkeys going up into those mountains doing the communications.
Right on.
So
first response.
Yeah. So that stuff that we do in that part of the hobby is very, very important, and it's a whole other section. There's so much to the hobby that that you can go down a whole bunch of different rabbit holes.
It's one of those hobbies that I dare say, like how Dan isn't here in the chat, just like building models, it really is as deep as you want to go. There's always something new to pursue, some new way to kind of level up your game and what you're doing. And I always feel that way about RPGs too. That you can always continue to improve. Now, going back to comics, I started out back in the 80s. Like my actual first love of comics was born mostly in those cartoons we saw as kids, but really my love affair with Marvel Comics started with the role-playing game that TSR put out circa 1984. Right,
I love that game.
I still use those particular rules to this day, right, when I get the chance. But so comics were a very different medium, and there was a few years back where I subscribed to the Marvel Forever Archive, their online thing where you can, I had a tablet and I was reading the digital versions of the comics, and they had a super interesting selection of stuff going all the way back to the 30s and old days. And one of the things I did was I read the Avengers from issue 1 all the way through until I couldn't follow the story anymore, which happened in the 90s. Right. That's when, so I haven't paid as much attention to comics, as particularly the monthly, the individual issue scene in my adult life. I've been much more exposed to graphic novels and collected works, things that, they achieved some sort of acclaim or recognition on their publication and then got bound together, like Sandman or Transmetropolitan, things like that. So in the years that you've been keeping up with the comic world, like what are the kind of changes that you've seen come and go? What are the trends, and where does it look like we are now? Where does it look like we're heading?
Well, it all goes with the artist. I mean, say you're reading a run of Wolverines and you're liking the character, but there's a different writer that comes in. He changes things up, and it may not be to everyone's favor, so it's always going to be changing. Comic books is really fluent and going with in a direction that they hire the writers to go. Mm-hmm. So there's directions that each character goes in, and then they find their way back to center. I mean, it's touch and go. It's a lot of people get upset about certain characters going one way, and it causes some controversy, and it always snaps back to a reset button. Like Spider-Man, he's been old and he's been having kids and things like that, but everyone remembers Spider-Man as being a teenage kid. So they always snap him back to a teenager or a young adult, because that's their go-to. That's what people write Spider-Man about, but they don't want to see him as like a father.
They don't want to see him babysitting his grandkids, right, or something like that. Yeah.
The stories to be told there, and then they try telling them, and it gets out there, but it always snaps back to the main character where people remember him by.
Well, I really I do see that myself. It seems like from what little I do know about the DC universe, they have this cycle where they kind of reset the whole continuity every so often, but then everybody wants good old Batman and Green Lantern and Superman and Wonder. Everybody likes
exactly
archetype, those classics, and so they just end up back in the same mess that they were in the first place. So they, what I don't know what the point of the reset was.
Yeah,
but that's a really interesting phenomenon. What is it about comic book characters that makes them timeless in that way? They resist even the creators' attempts to advance them in age.
Absolutely.
What do you think that is?
I can only speak for myself. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people that come into the stores and get their perspective of it, and I may not always agree with it, but for me, it's always about. I grew up with with morals because I read Superman, and Captain America, and I've understood the world outside more fluently because I've gained morals from these characters, and movies too. It's not just comic books. I've watched movies, and I've seen like these John Wayne characters, and I said like that's the kind of person that I want to be, and that's the kind of morals that I want. And to me, it's just kind of refreshing to get like a dose of Captain America just doing it just because it needs to be done.
It's true. Media so much is the vehicle of the heroes that the people we're supposed to admire and want to emulate, want to be like in some way, and that's one of the I really see that principle too. So many things become preachy. I remember as a kid that, you know, something became uncool. Oh yeah, that's just about being safe or not doing drugs or something like that. But there was something about comic book heroes that was still cool. Superman can be the Boy Scout, and his power makes it more meaningful, not less somehow.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's always been my passion. I've seen my characters I love go different directions than I like, but at the end they're gonna just come back to my growing up with them, you know, being the way they were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And certain things belong in comic books and certain things don't. A lot of people trying to put real life into comic books, which you have to have a real life a base for comic books, but it just
Yeah.
gets too realism, and it just kind of draws me out of the comic books a lot. And
So I get you. I disagree. I don't agree with that completely, or maybe it's just the contextual stipulation I'd want to make because on the one hand, one of the things that made Spider-Man the breakout success he was at the time was the fact that Stan Lee specifically injected a whole bunch of real life stuff on him that they weren't used to seeing on comic book heroes, like his money troubles, and he's a geek in his regular life, and he's having all kinds of, he's got to take care of Aunt May, you know. And famously, Stan always had that story where he said his boss at the time asked, "Do you even know what a hero is?" Right? Yeah.
right, that's the real life I'm talking about, and that needs to be put in there. It has to have like a base for it.
Yeah.
But if you're putting in like everyone knows Captain America was in World War II and fighting Nazis and things like that, and that's his origin. But they're bringing him out and they're changing the Captain America into a different Captain America that's been in Afghanistan, which is great, but it needs to be a different character sometimes. Maybe it is a different Captain America. Don't get me wrong, but maybe
Yeah.
not Captain America. Maybe someone else without that mantle, because we already know Captain America's been in World War II and he fought the Nazis, and that's who he is. That's what made him. We can have another one that's been in Afghanistan and been doing that, but give him a different mantle.
You know, I'm reminded of I think it was the late '80s in the Captain America comics. He had the arc where Steve Rogers lost the title, the mantle, and the shield, and it went to the guy who later became U.S. agent. His name is escaping me right now, but the guy who was the
Right,
replacement of
John
Captain America.
Walker. Yeah,
Thank
John
you,
Walker.
John
I think.
Walker. Yeah. And he became the new Captain America, and it was interesting because it was a new character specifically, and it still featured Steve Rogers doing his own thing off on the other side.
Correct.
And it was an interesting story that has it really stood the test of time. The U.S. agent is a character that they've even incorporated into the TV shows, as I understand, or the
Yeah.
new movie or something like that. I can't remember all the details, but exactly as you said, they snapped it back to Steve Rogers. It eventually that title, that mantle, it had to go back to Steve Rogers. He's the only guy who can be that character. Iron
Well,
Man
I
has
mean,
to be Tony Stark in the same way, you know?
Captain America passed his mantle down to other characters, but it's always been other characters. Like Falcon is now the Captain America, and he was Captain America in the comic books long before he was in the movies. The movies is just catching up,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that is okay. I mean, he's Falcon, but he's also Captain America. It's not changing who he is as a Falcon and who he came from. It's that's everyone knows Falcon, you know, and his backstory. That
And
didn't change when he became Captain America.
now, in your opinion, has that been handled well in the continuity of the story? Is Sam Wilson a good Captain America? Has it been a worthwhile new development on this character? Is it a worthwhile tribute to Steve Rogers and that kind of thing? I'm not familiar with the more modern run, so I can't speak.
Right. Falcon has a lot of good morals, and he fits the role pretty good. I would say he's an outstanding Captain America.
Okay. Well, I got to be honest. From the moment I first saw Anthony Mackie in the movies, I was like, I want to see that guy play Captain America eventually. I don't know. I don't feel that the writing of the movies has held up to the degree that I would have liked to have seen for him, but I do think he captured that role and would have done it well with a good writing team to back him up.
I feel like he hit the movies awesome, but then he became like a background character, and he has so much more potential to just be sidelined a lot. And the way he entered it with Captain America running past him all the time, like on your left, that was brilliant. That was classic, and it just kind of set the tone for, he's just the runner-up of Captain America, and he's just going to be the next in line because he's putting the effort in. He's running. He's got that bad past it, that he just wants to set right. And to me, that's what a hero is just kind of doing what you got to do.
And now all of this leads back around to, speaking of heroes, this leads back to the gaming talk, the role-playing games. Now, when did each of you guys get started in the hobby?
I think I was probably 14. AD&D, Keep on the Borderlands.
Okay.
This
was early 80s, probably.
Yeah, like 84, 86-ish, somewhere right through there.
So we've been at it for a minute. How about you, Rykus?
I'm a little bit younger than Nemo, so I was about 12 and 13, and that would have been 82 or 83. Me and my friends got together, and we had a lot of older, acquaintances. Me, it was my uncle and my, what I would consider my brother.
Okay.
Stepbrother, or not stepbrother, but brother-in-law, if you will, Wayne.
Okay.
But he was a big player, and it was just a big influence that they were playing, and we were starting to learn how to play, and we wanted to get into that. And I started playing AD&D second edition because that was just now coming out. It was probably like around that time.
Yeah, that would have been 88, 89-ish, I think, somewhere in that vein. So, yeah, I was playing around that time too.
So yeah, I was 12 when at 92, 93. Okay. And that's when we first second edition came out, and we just bought the first books and started reading. And my best friend since childhood started DMing, and we just been playing that game for
Can you remember the moment you got hooked? Was there a defining moment for you?
It was pretty much about the second or third game we played. I was just now getting the things of it. My friend's brother started DMing a little bit, and he's like, "You can't." I was like killing everybody with the sword, and like we were in a dungeon, and he's like, "You can't keep killing everybody because the storyline is there." And I was like, "What do you mean? You have to talk to people." So I started talking to skeletons. I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And
that's not what I meant.
But it was just classic because I didn't know anything about the skeletons. I'm just sitting there trying to talk to them because I didn't know. It was my first couple games. I was just trying to learn it, and at that point,
at 12, that would have made sense to me too. I would have said, "Well, okay, then I'll talk to the skeleton. I'll talk to the door. I'll talk to the car." I'm 12. I don't know what's going to talk back to me in this imaginary world.
So here I am, a barbarian, talking to a skeleton, seeing what's up, and like, "Hey, what's going on?" And
did the DM roll with it? Did the skeleton talk back to you at the time, or did he just attack you? Okay,
he straight up attacked me.
Well, he's technically correct, and so I suppose I have to accept that answer. But I would have had that skeleton, if not talk, it would start going like, start writing a list of demands or something. We demand better pay. We demand pay. We demand pay. We want to get paid. We want somebody to come in and dust our bones once a week at least.
But yeah, that got me into BattleTech and a couple other things. And unfortunately, that Marvel game that you're talking about, the RPG tabletop.
Yes.
I've had that book, but I've never found someone to play because it was such a weird integration between two different realms of my friends. I had the gaming friends and I had my comic book friends, and it just didn't match very well for me. My friends I had from childhood were comic book friends, but when we played, it was D&D because we were hooked on that.
Man, that breaks my heart to hear because I had a solid overlap between them. I got to play Marvel a lot, both through grade school and high school. Heck, even recently in the last few years, I technically still have a campaign running. It's just kind of pick up and play every so often. We can discuss that later.
No, that was a great game system. I really appreciated it. The whole shift, unearthly, monstrous, all that game, going up and down shift levels and all that. It actually worked out pretty well.
I find your interpretation of skeletons a little humorous. Tongue King, I was just wondering where you were. I've got a bone to pick with you. Now, it is an amazing system, and it was one of my first really, truly rules-like games, I would consider it, of money was abstracted out completely, so you weren't, tracking an actual dollar amount for your character, which was, what most games required of you. It was the first game I played that was expressly superhero, and it really opens your eye to a different kind of game. Many DMs would struggle running a high level AD&D game or D&D game because high level spells can really just mess with the entire. They can literally mess with the fabric of the universe, right? But people who have run a lot of superhero games with a lot of creative players who want to, well, if this is how my phasing works, let me see what kind of boundaries I can push. Right. That kind of stuff prepares you for high level D&D play.
Yes, it was very, very open to what you could do. I remember one campaign in that system that I played in. We had a guy, or I think it was a girl, who was playing in that game with us, and she was the drawing person. She could just draw anything and bring it off the page, and obviously had varying power levels and stuff. But so that was kind of a cool thing. And at first, it was just it was just, oh, I can only draw these one thing, so like rocks and basic objects. But it was pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits with the powers. Oh, can I make a gun? Sure, you can make a gun, but it only does typical damage.
Right, yeah, because it's just a gun. It's a regular old gun.
Right. But because of your power, okay, so now you want to make a rock, but that rock is going to actually do amazing damage because you've got more into that. You know what I mean? Like it was.
Yeah. One of the greatest resources, it came with technically the advanced edition a few years later, but the Ultimate Powers book was fantastic. And apparently they've allowed the copyright to lapse, so there's still websites and PDFs floating around of all those resources like Classic Marvel Forever and other sites that I've heard of where you can still download those rules and play that game if you want. So it's all, the possibility still exists, Rykus.
Okay. Hopefully. I like the creative DMs too, because if I get a great DM, my gaming style enhances a lot because I go outside the norm of, okay, I have a sword, but I don't always have to use a sword. I like to use other things available. Like say there's a stalactite above the thing,
Right.
I mean,
Right, yeah, right. And the kind of thing, well, instead of just shooting the guy who's chasing me, can I shoot the chandelier and slow all of them down? Right,
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. I do appreciate that creative thinking. It certainly takes a certain kind of dungeon master.
Right, I broke
Just
a couple of dungeon masters in my time that just kind of gave up. And was like, I can't do this. I was like, oh man.
oh yeah, that's too bad. I've done it a variety of ways over the years, and I think on the average, I tend towards more of a cinematic and swashbuckling style, the kind of stuff that you're talking about. If I get a player who wants to do those kind of things, I'm pretty happy to roll with it.
My current character is a swashbuckler. So
yeah. I mean, how do you swashbuckle anyway? I've always kind of wondered about that and never got around to doing the internet research. But just this,
a rag. I think it requires a rag.
probably it. Everything with me involves a rag eventually. But just this weekend, I was playing an AD&D game, and that was much more dialed into we were still role playing. We weren't even moving miniatures around the board. It was all theater of the mind. But it was highly tactical, and we were very much like cautious approach. There wasn't a very cavalier attitude or stuff like that. So it was much more firmly grounded in realism and simulationism. Not that D&D is a intrinsically realistic game system, but you could immerse yourself in the simulation, the feel of it. Which is a very almost the opposite of what we were just talking about, being adventurous and swashbuckling and more loose with what can happen.
Interesting you talk about that, because I actually worked with 2 or 3 people that I gamed with on a regular basis. Like we would have the game, and then we'd go out and like do yard. We were on a landscaping crew together. So then we'd go out and we'd be raking the yard down, doing the cleanups on the yards, whatever. And we would do role playing right there in the middle of the yard without any of the miniatures or mostly character development.
Right.
There was something we needed to resolve.
You don't have dice and character sheets, so most of that stuff that you need to know can't be done. But like the role playing and what can I get order guys to build me a wall over here?
There was we kind of worked it out. There was a couple times where we needed to do the role playing, or we needed dice rolls. It was like, okay, how much change do you have in your pocket? Take all the change in your pocket and throw it on the ground, and all the heads up. As long as all the heads land up, the more heads than tails, then you make it. If it's less heads than tails, then don't make it. I mean, that was literally what we were doing. And
actually, that's pretty awesome. I've always loved that kind of creative stuff. And of course, from the LARPing days that once I got hip to rock, paper, scissors, man, you don't need dice anymore. Hey, just throw me a dice. Whatever. Even if we're playing D&D, well, we're out someplace. Do rock, paper, scissors with me, and that's good enough. We'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, that was actually one of the nice things about doing the live action stuff is not that I didn't like dice. Dice are cool, and but not having to carry dice with you all the time and keep a big bag of dice around to roll 100 dice 6 if you need to.
Yeah, LARPing is definitely a distinct. It overlaps, of course, with the regular role playing games, but it is really its own thing. It's its own version of the hobby, and it's definitely the more immersive, in my opinion. Like once you start LARPing and you're physically acting out the part of the character, it is very easy to get immersed in the story and the action and the conversations and relating to people in different ways.
Yeah, I did have to admit I liked doing the live action stuff. It's not as, how do I put it? It's not as personal as doing like tabletop stuff, sort of, but it is more immersive. Absolutely. The acting part is what
the word. I think I know what you're saying, and the word I would choose is intimate, not in a dirty way. Get your mind out of the gutter, you guys.
Yeah, you chat, guys.
Intimate. You're sitting at the table, everything is happening together, and like if we're sitting at a D&D table, even if Nemo is off in another part of the world doing his own thing, Rykus is still there and kind of hearing it, partaking of it. He's still
Yeah.
part of it, right? Whereas in a LARP, it's a much more diffuse experience. It's your work, and a lot of times, depending on the LARP, the way we would do it, you were a lot of times playing with people you had never met before. They're not your friend. It's a very different experience than sitting around a table with a group of your friends.
Yes. There's trust building that goes on in LARP that doesn't necessarily go on. It goes on in LARP kind of in game as the game's happening. Whereas with tabletop, it's like, oh, me and Rykus know each other. We already have the friendship trust built. You and I already have the friendship trust built. The three of us sit down at the table. We kind of know what to expect out of each other. Whereas you walk into a room full of a dozen LARPers and you're like, who are these people? And not only do you have to feel out their characters, but you have to feel them out too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's one of the things for me, particularly, that made it so immersive the first time I did it. I my first LARP, I was hooked immediately. It was a vampire LARP in Philadelphia, and for that reason, it was the first time I had gamed with. It was a big game. It was like 100 people, I think, in a nightclub in Philadelphia, and it was the first time I had gamed with people I didn't really know at all. And here I am. Everybody's acting out roles, and I got to interact with a whole bunch of people that I didn't know personally. So it was really neat to only know them as those characters. Like, that guy's an enemy, that he's an adversary. I'm not sure if he's a good guy or a bad guy. I don't know if I can trust this guy over here. I thought I couldn't trust this guy, but he actually saved my life.
Yeah, I remember one. It probably happened more than once, but I do remember back in the day when you were running like 13 past midnight and all that, that there was actually some times where you had to make announcements. Hey, remember, these people are in character. You're not actually getting to know who they are. You are getting to know the characters because these people are acting. Maybe some of the personality traits bleed over, but that doesn't mean, And I remember having to.
Yes.
Maybe that's something that should be just a disclaimer when you're going into a LARPing situation, because nobody said that to me in the beginning, and I kind of understood that. But
well, you joined my game at a very interesting time, because it was when we had an explosion in attendance at that time. Literally around the time you started is when we went one game we had 15 players. The next game we had 30, or it was about that drastic. It felt that drastic. And that was around the time you joined. So it was a whole new world for us. Prior, it was a small game. It was like a 10 to 15 person LARP. Actually, I can remember many games that were less than 10 people. We had 7, 8, something like that. So it was a fun cross section, an overlap of the intimacy of a LARP setting where we all kind of knew each other, and it was more fun because we were more intent on working together against whatever the ST was throwing against us, But
right.
as the game evolved and grew, once it gets to a certain point, once you get to that 15, maybe 20 players, the game really takes up a life of its own. Yo, Black Lodge Games. These guys are some vampire veterans themselves. They talk about all kinds of great stuff. You should definitely go look at their videos on vampire. They have great takes that really will mesh with our experiences in the LARPing world. So, Black Lodge guys, Ginger Fraser and Young Steve, this is Nemo. Nemo played in my LARP back in the day. He also ran a Dark Ages LARP of his own called Legends of Darkness, which was sort of a sister game that happened on, I think we had it like the same weekend. We were Friday night and you were Saturday night the same week, or something like that.
I think it was. It might have been. It was alternating weeks, and Yeah, I actually.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I enjoyed playing that, running that game for a long time. Oh, what did we run it for? Like 2 years, 3 years? I think it was a long time that we ran that game for. At least it seemed like it.
And the
Definitely.
two I participated in, you had two distinct iterations. The first one was the classic Dark Ages LARP using the Long Night rule book. I still got that on my shelf over there.
Right.
And you ran that for a year or two, and then you guys did a reset
We
and
we
used the
did.
same rules but set it back in Carthage. We
Yeah, we
actually
started
played
in like
Carthage, and
medieval.
that was so much fun. It was so oddball and weird.
That was a hard one to run too, because we had like, we brought in like the werewolves with that one, and we made like
Yeah.
all the werewolves gladiators, and they were owned by the vampires, and the vampires were like the gods of Carthage, like you would see out of like 300 sort of, with what's that guy, the big guy's name, Neil, or
Bal Haman, was that the guy? Is that who
Yeah,
you're thinking of?
so all the vampires were like on that guy's level. I'm trying to make it so that other viewers can understand too. But
right.
so all the vampires were like on that guy's level, and then there was like the normal servant class, like low gen, but like 13 gen vampires, whatever. And then there was the werewolves that were like the slaves and the gladiators that were treated like slaves and gladiators.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And that was a really interesting take. You had werewolves, but they were slaves of the vampires who ran the city. And that was part of what made it such an interesting thing. It was vampires and open rulership of the mortal population, and that's and there were plus sides and downsides to it, but we clung very heavily to the available published lore at that time, which meant clan book Bali, which no decent human being should read and do. Right? Our souls are forever tainted for doing that, and we have but that other than that, it was a great game, dude. So much fun. I had a great time. Of course, I was playing a crack-headed true Bruja, so definitely
and the clans were different.
there's some stuff that I would do differently.
The whole clan thing was different back then too, because the Brujas back then were more. If you look at what the rules state, the Brujas back then were more upperclassmen. They weren't just the brawler fighters from the modern Mind's Eye Theater stuff. Then you get to modern day stuff like your game, and the Bruja were like, oh, we're the frontline guys. We're the guys who go out there.
Yeah, well, and again, that's where the very notion of the true Bruja comes from. Is they're this older original bloodline that's the opposite of what replaced them later. They're more the detached intellectual.
Right.
They have a lack of emotion instead of an overabundance of it.
So for me, it was a great twist on the scenario, and brought a bunch of history up front, right in front, right to everybody. So that was part of it too.
It's kind of funny too, because it was one of the few ways that you could engender an interest in history in the LARPing community at the time. It was a very young crowd.
Yeah.
But I remember all of a sudden these people were delving into all the ancient history that was available.
They needed to know it in order to survive in the game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was like, I didn't even really have an idea of what and who the Phoenician people were before that game. And now it's been an enduring interest of mine for years.
Well, at least it rubbed off on somebody.
Yeah. Well, and hey, don't let anybody ever tell you that these games aren't educational, because the people who play these games, they're economists, they're historians, they're psychologists, they're writers, they're readers, they're critics, they're scientists and naturalists. It's like you got to wear so many hats to run a decent game, because you got to know how to simulate a world.
Yeah. And that's what makes it a great hobby.
And now, how did you guys end up getting together to do the Ashtabula Hobby Talk channel?
Well, should I go down the story or start
maybe
the story?
describe what Ashtabula Hobby Talk is first.
Was
Okay.
it a long courtship? Did you exchange rings early on? Did that come later?
No. That actually we passed some bills back and forth first, but that was about it. So Ashtabula Hobby Talk itself, the show, we seek out people who have hobbies or deeply involved in hobbies like you, like game creators, for instance. For me, I love the role playing stuff. I almost wish I was still involved in a role playing game.
And we find out all kinds of different hobbies that people don't even know about.
Yeah, we find the people who have the hobbies, and we go profile them basically. We go back through our channel. We've got a guy who's got probably one of the largest LP collections on this side of the country. We just did one with a blacksmith, and he said, "Yeah, come on out. I'll just make something for you, show you how it's done."
Glass blowing, candle making,
yeah,
anything.
We've got a guy. We've got some shows coming up. I just talked to a guy today about getting him on the show with his monster trucks. So hopefully he's coming.
That's awesome.
We've got a guy who breeds horses. These draft horses. They're a very specific kind of draft horse. He's coming up on the show soon too. The very rare breed of draft horses, and he knows everything about them. We've got what else do we got coming up? We got a bunch of stuff coming up. A guy who does fabrication.
Yeah, if I could dwell on the horses a little bit, I thought this was fascinating because we were talking about this before we went live. Is this guy that you're interviewing? He had 16 of these horses, this particular breed of draft horses, and that represented 1% of the world population. There's less than 2,000 of these things throughout the world.
So at one point, these horses were almost extinct. They are a European horse, but they are like most draft horses. You see the Budweiser horses and the
like Lipizaners and the Clydesdales, those kind of.
All those were all bred for war. Every single one of them was bred to put a knight on the back of and march out into the field. These were the only kind of draft, the first or only draft horses that were bred specifically outside of the war category.
Since the early 1800s, I think it was.
Yeah,
in medieval times.
So they're huge horses. They're big. They dwarf me to some extent. I mean, I still look them in the eye, but they're big, wide horses. And he's, I don't know exactly how many he's got right now, but he's one of there's maybe 1,500 of them in the whole country, and he's like that. He knows everything about them. He uses them on the farm on a regular basis.
They're really chill horses.
So. Yeah, they're nice horses.
They don't have a bad reaction to like loud noises, or they're calm.
Because they're not bred for war, they're not uppity, they're not hypey.
Yeah, not like race horses are more derived from that warrior stock that they've got that competitive mindset. Practically.
If you want to know more about these horses, stay tuned to our show.
Yeah.
We're going to learn a lot more too.
Because we're going to learn too. I've gone as far as I know with the horses as far as that goes.
They're fascinating.
You heard it here first, my little goblins. Subscribe to Ashtabula Hobby Talk and learn more about all these interesting hobbies that they're covering.
So, as far as how the show got started, and how we met, I actually, for some of the people watching, I know, I have an off-grid hobby farm. I moved into a heavily Amish area. I started working with one of the Amish guys, going out doing construction work with him. I still work with him to this day. Been doing it for probably 6 years now with just that guy. We got a trash out one of the guys he knows that he does a lot of work for bought a house sight unseen, and we went in to trash the house out and gut it and remodel it for the guy so that he could flip it. And when I walked into the house, lo and behold, the person who lived there was a comic book collector. His garage was filled with comic books. His the breezeway between the house and the garage was filled with comic books. The attic was filled with comic books.
Whoa.
We rented a 20-yard dumpster. I don't know if you know how big that is, but a 20-yard dumpster is very big.
Yeah.
I filled a third of that dumpster with comic books.
I think I gotta lie down on the floor here for a minute. I'll be right back.
So for all the comic book fans out there, please understand that I didn't throw out anything that I couldn't save. Honestly,
I know. The real heartbreak is probably having to see all of them in that condition. I've watched seen other situations.
Being naive to what you threw away is probably best.
Probably best, yeah.
Yes.
Well,
if I had to throw those away,
the roof and the reason I threw them away is because of things like the roof and the breezeway had collapsed between the garage and the house. There was walls of books in there. Those books were soaked. You couldn't even pull the pages apart.
Wow.
There was a pile of books upstairs, and this is the one thing that this is why I didn't know, because there were all these books, and I should bring one because I still have like 5 of them. I'll put one on the set. But there was a bunch of them, and I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of copies here, and there were cards in them. And to me, it all looked the same because I didn't know comic books, because I haven't looked at comic books since I was, 13, 14 years old tops. So
yeah.
I'm going through it, and I think it was an X-Men with cards in the back. And I'm tossing them. I'm like, well, I'll keep 5, because I don't know why he's got a dozen copies here. They must not be worth anything. But he had like 50 copies. And so I'm tossing them. Then I take him to Rykus, and he's like, oh, yeah, that was Daredevil's first rookie card was in that set, or was somebody's rookie card was in that set. Deadpool, yeah. And and I'm like, I bet I threw it out because I threw 50 of these away and I only kept 5. And I didn't know that there were different cards in them. So I filled the bed of my pickup truck probably twice with comic books that I thought were savable, and I brought them to Rykus. And I said, hey, man, I don't really know anything about comic books. I don't know what to do with them exactly. Wow. Help me go through them. And
we didn't know each other prior to that.
Yeah, we didn't know each other. I literally found him on the internet in his comic book shop, and went into his comic book store and said, hey, man, I got all these comic books I don't know what to do with. Could you go through them and help me figure out what they are? And if there's some stuff worth something, we could put some in your store and split the capital.
Wow. Let me paint the scenery for my comic shop. I'm the kind of guy that likes to talk about comic books to my customers. So I have stools on the other side of my counter for people to sit down and just sit there and talk to me. Okay, I get people that just sit there and we talk for hours about comics. Usually Saturday night is when me and a couple of my friends just hang out at the comic book store and we just sit there. Sometimes we throw on a movie in the background and watch, and we just sit there and hang out and talk about comics. The store closes at 7:00, but if you come at 7 on a Saturday and you see the open sign on, I'm going to be there. Sometimes I'm there till midnight or 1:00 in the morning, just hanging out.
Okay.
So I have a stool over there, and Nemo comes and sits down, and he brings these pile of comic books, and I'm going through and I'm telling him what he's got and crying to when I find out what possibly he could have thrown away because I wasn't there. And we work a deal out, and I give him pointers on some stuff I didn't know anything about, where to take it, and next thing I know, he comes back and with this opportunity about Ashtabula Hobby Talk.
Yeah, I mean, after about 6 months or so, and right. So me and a couple other friends had talked about starting podcasts here or there around different ideas, and it never really panned out good. Some of them have gone on to do awesome podcasts themselves, and can appreciate it. But it was just timing.
During the time that he was at my comic shop and hanging out, we realized that we both had like a history in film.
Yeah, we both did production in the background, and and we had a lot in common. I mean, we actually do, even though we grew up in two different kind of backgrounds. We've got a lot, between us.
Common interests, common tastes, and aesthetics.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, you're even kind of dressed the same right now.
Well, that's on purpose.
Okay.
Well,
this is your uniform. This is your
work. Yeah, sort of. The hat's part of the uniform.
Okay. All right. Good. That's the official Ashtabula Hobby Talk hat.
Yeah. We decided that. Yeah, black hat.
I don't like logos.
And actually, the sets, we're still under construction here because we're moving out of the old studio into the new studio.
This is the first camera take of the new set.
Yeah, actually, this is the first time anybody's even gotten a glimpse of it.
You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? I am bringing you a first. Yet again, you heard it here first on Jawin with Jack. We're getting the digs.
We'll have it all our editing equipment and everything's all still piled up on a desk. Our line producer was supposed to come down here with us. But
so Nemo put this idea.
What about the t-shirt?
This?
Yeah.
Oh, the t-shirt. I got the t-shirt. You mean the giveaway? Hold on.
Yeah, Dan is prodding me. He's saying, ask about the t-shirt.
Okay, so we got this t-shirt here. When we hit
like a big shirt,
it's actually a normal size shirt, but when we hit 100 subscribers, this shirt's going out to the 100 subscriber.
Awesome. Hold on, I'm going to switch it so we can see it. There we go. Awesome.
Oh, were we backwards?
Yeah. I forget. The Restream does that to you by default. I forget to switch it.
Sorry. There you go. So somebody will win a shirt, not this one specifically, but any size, any color, whatever color it is. When we hit 100 on our subscriber YouTube, we'll give that away. And
nice.
We'll give this coffee mug away. It's a coffee mug from my Wednesday night radio show that I do locally out here in Ashtabula County, and won't print another one of these again because the repeater frequency that this radio show was on doesn't exist anymore. I had to move to a different frequency. But
it's a collector's item then.
Limited
edition. There
were only 12 like and this shirt is so awesome. Every week on the show, I take this shirt, right, and I shake it, and the wrinkles come out, and then I take it and I shove it into this mug. So at least 25 or 30 times, and the printing is held up and the shirt is held up. So there you go.
Proof that it's sturdy. He's abused it. It comes pre-broken in.
Well, you'll get a brand new one. Whoever it is will get a brand new one. It won't be that.
Same quality though.
Yes.
Dan is also saying, ask Rykus about his giveaway. Rykus, what you giving away?
Oh yeah, the contest.
Advice?
Oh. Yep. Just recently, the first appearance of Punisher, Amazing Spider-Man 129 came in through my door, and the Death of Gwen Stacy 121 came through my door, and I made like a post about it, and all my customers are like wanting that comic book. And I thought the best way to do it would be to raffle off an option to buy it. Because I don't like the stores that do first come, first serve, because I got a job and I'm not going to be able to make it to a certain store at whenever it, so the first person that shows up gets it. And it's not fair. I don't like it.
Right.
I never like that.
And again, it also feels a little skeezy if you say, "Well, now I gotta let a bidding war happen for 2 weeks, and I'm gonna take the best offer after 2 weeks."
Right.
Well,
I don't want to auction it off because I don't want the price to go too high where I'm ripping people off. Right. I'm not the store that rips people off. I like to give people the good deals, and I like my customers to walk away with a comic book that they feel satisfied and just can cherish. Mm-hmm. So I developed this raffle to honor our 4-year anniversary coming up Black Friday at the end of this month. And we're going to do a pulling on our show live.
Yeah.
We'll pull the ticket.
The ticket for the person who gets the opportunity first crack at it is going to get drawn on the show. And I believe that's gonna be, if we get it all together, that's going to be our first live stream.
And to get a ticket, you don't have to buy a ticket or anything. You can just walk through my comic book store, and once per day, you get a free ticket. If you buy $20 or more, you get a ticket.
Oh, wow.
So there's multiple ways to get a ticket.
So it's not even like directly people are just buying tickets from you. It's you got to patronize the store.
Right. Just come through the store, say, hey, I want an opportunity to buy this comic book, and there you go. You come in every day we're open, you get another ticket.
Wow. Imagine the Goblin King asking people to do his bidding. Well, I do it all the time. I am the king of goblins.
So, the first appearance of Punisher is iconic. It's been in a lot of movies. I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan, so if you ever watched True Lies, the kid that sells his Amazing Spider-Man 129 to the store to help his girlfriend out, that's iconic.
Yes.
I relate everything to movies, music, and comic books, so I'm a fanatic of all media.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, I think if I recall correctly, you've said your particular favorite in the Marvel universe is the X-Men and their particular adventures, the mutant world.
Exactly. I'm a big Wolverine fan mostly, but X-Men all in the whole is awesome to me.
What makes them stand out to you in such a ripe field for colorful characters?
I mean, they didn't ask for what they are. They're born that way. They're mutants. They're just genetically altered, and they can either choose to be good or choose to take their power and just to wreak havoc and take what they want. To me, that's more realistic in this world. People just born into, money or power, or born into poverty, and you choose what you want to do with that.
Yeah, and I see that theme over and over again in the stories that has come out of that over the years, particularly that perpetual tension between Magneto and Professor Xavier, of Magneto's not necessarily irrevocably evil. He's maybe cold and ruthless, but there's something to that, to his way of thinking, as opposed to we got to get along with everybody else. It really asks more than most series. It asks some very deep questions in that way, like what degree of self-defense is justified. To what degree are you willing to protect your identity? To what degree do you need to carve out your own space?
Right. Majority of the mutants just want to be accepted and to live a normal life, and there's mutants in there that destroy that and want to rob banks and rule the world, and it sets a standard and causes hatred towards the mutant kind, and they're always trying to fight to be accepted because of the offset.
Right. And now, out of that stable, what are your particular favorite characters and why?
Wolverine is always my go-to. I mean, I have him up on my shelf up here. I want to try to build a shelf up here that represents a lot of my personality.
He's not an uncommon choice. Why Wolverine? What makes him so special? Just a guy with a metal skeleton. What?
So much pain, so much anger. Just kind of holding it out and just trying to be part of a family that he wants to be, and creating a whole new family with the X-Men, even though he's had so much pain and he's more of a loner, but he's fighting that just to be accepted. Mm-hmm. I can relate to that a lot. So it's
yeah. So that short, angry, hairy man, you resonate with that character archetype?
I mean, you see me next to Nemo. He's a tall dude.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a reason I choose a Sasquatch for the thumbnail.
I'll vouch for him. His Napoleon syndrome is not that bad.
But yeah, I've always been short, so I mean, Wolverine's short, and the healing factor, the animating bones, the claws. There's so much about Wolverine that's just more dimensional and more satisfying to watch him just go berserk after he just can't take it anymore.
Well, and he's definitely resonated enough where I think he's got explored more than probably any single mutant character. He's had more longer runs of individual comics. He's had more focus on him. He's been a much more central character than, even when I got into the game in the 80s, like I talked about, Wolverine was there, but he was not that big of a character. His fame, he didn't take off like that until much more into the 80s, from my perspective. Now, Nemo, shifting it back to you on Spotlight, what are your particular favorite superheroes from over the years? Understanding, I know you've never been that big into comic books, but drawn from movies, TV shows, and what your friends have told you.
Well, no. I mean, I have read some comic books, a few. And I watched a ton of the movies, and I was a big fan of the cartoon shows in the early, Saturday morning cartoons was filled with superheroes. So that was absolutely great. I do like Spider-Man. I am kind of a fan of Spider-Man, and
it's hard not to be.
Yeah, he's right up there on the list of, mostly the ones that I like the most are the ones that didn't mean to be like that. That were accidentally thrust into that situation. Spider-Man was one of them. I don't know if you can really say Wolverine was one of them, but he kind of was.
Well, it's kind of interesting. A lot of the stuff that Rykus brought up about mutants really does apply to all of them, like across the board. The Fantastic Four could, they didn't ask for what they did. It was an accident. It was thrust upon them, and
the Fantastic
they could have been monsters with their powers.
Yeah, Marvel split in different different genres. I mean, Fantastic Four is not mutants.
Yep, they
were genetically altered after birth. Where mutant has that genetic X factor.
Yeah, it was the cosmic radiation in the atmosphere, the Hulk, the gamma ray bomb, Spider-Man. But all of the villains still fall into the same kind of categories. Some of them were born that way in mutants. They could choose to go bad with the powers, but they could choose to go good with them as well. And that's where so many superheroes go. That's the fundamental choice in the very beginning of between hero and villain. I really love origin stories like that, and I've even appreciated stories where they give some of our classic villains a redemption arc, like Doctor Doom or Dr. Octopus.
Right?
Two of the greatest villains out there.
And I know that my first encounter with a sort of redemption arc with Doom was when they did Doom 2099 for that short while. That was actually kind of a cool comic, and it was the real character being thrown 100 years into the future.
Right.
And
Silver Surfer had the same kind of thing where he was destroying planets with his boss, and then he comes across a place that he actually liked again.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Doom's been kind of the most interesting villain because he's not really a villain. He's a really good ruler of Latveria, and the people there love him, and he rules pretty good.
Yeah, he does take care of his own people. That's what makes him such a complex character.
Right. And outside of the Latveria, he's a bad guy because, they call him other things and they go after him for this or that, and he's just trying to protect Latveria. I mean, other writers took him in different directions, but the core essence of Dr. Doom is he's just the ruler of Latveria, and he just wants to keep it peaceful there.
So you asked me a little bit about favorite ones, and that I'm saying Spider-Man,
right?
But I also really I loved Thor growing up, and he was right there on the top of my list until the movies came out. And don't get me wrong, I think the guy did an okay job, but they just made him out to not be. He was more honorable and less drunk and lush in the comic books when I was reading them.
Well, yeah, that's I do really, I do really see that out of the initial run of characters and stuff. Thor was the one I liked the least, and maybe I went in with too high of expectations because I really like Kenneth Branagh as a director, so I expected more from him, or better writing. Yeah, but I was not terribly impressed by Thor, but ironically, as each movie went, I started to like them better, although I haven't seen the travesty of a fourth movie.
I kind of prefer the movie version.
Do you really?
I thought he's kind of funny. He's strong. He's powerful. The comic book version started out with him having an alter ego as a doctor, and he would just pound a cane, and the cane would turn into a hammer, and all of a sudden he's Thor. That seemed kind of like weird of God just kind of going around pretending to be a human doctor and just kind of.
I don't know.
That's one of the interesting parts. The lore of that, to my recollection, is that Donald Blake was actually just a normal guy, a handicapped doctor, and he got that cane and he became Thor. He took on that aspect. And it was later in the series, very early on, but still later in the series, that they retconned that. No, actually, he is the god Thor who was sent to Earth, punished by Odin. That was actually a retcon early on. It was. So I really see what you're saying, that they changed that early on, and they gave us a nod to Don Blake in the movies by, like, that was the name he kind of just arbitrarily threw on him. It's he's a doctor friend of mine. He loves steroids. He's a steroid freak. He's a big fitness freak.
I picture Thor being more like a Hercules or like a Conan type character spun into a modern Earth. He's going to have like a savage and not understanding the world around him. And I think Chris Hemsworth brought that to Thor, just kind of slamming the glass down and thinking it's respectful and like, give me another.
Right.
It was kind of funny, but savagery, but it is the charm of that character, I think.
Yeah, that's true. They did feature a sort of fish out of water element in that way, and he delivered the comedic aspects of that really well. I do think Chris Hemsworth did a respectable job, and I don't know that I think the third movie, the Ragnarok, was a very good film. I laughed a lot through it. I liked a lot of the comedy in it. However, I can kind of see where hardcore fans are saying none of the movies were really true to the character.
That's creative license.
Well, that's every single movie character. I mean, every movie that Marvel puts out is not going to be like the comic book in some sort of way or another.
Right.
You have to think of it as a different universe.
For any one of those characters, you had 50 years of publication. You can't put all that in to 3 movies.
And with that 50 years,
you're gonna have to pick and choose.
Yeah, with that 50 years of publications, every writer that comes on changes the character a little bit, retcons it. So each comic book is not true to the comic book. So if a movie comes out and it's not true to the comic book, it's true to the comic book for not being true to the comic. It kind of
right.
It contradicts itself.
So
it's a different version of it.
That way about Iron Man, when they announced Iron Man, I love Iron Man. He's my personal favorite, and Robert Downey Jr. is one of my favorite actors, always has been. So I can't help but go to the theater. But I went in with super low expectations because Green Lantern, Daredevil, we had been quite abused, us comic book fans, up to that point.
Yes.
So I was so over the moon, pleasantly surprised by how good Iron Man legitimately was. It was better than most Hollywood movies at the time, let alone good for a comic book movie.
I was actually really, really happy with the Iron Man movies. I thought they did a great job with them.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm one of those crazy ones. I even like Iron Man 3 as much as everybody else hates that. I like that movie.
Was that the Ultron one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one was still good.
Yeah, you can't go into the movies.
That was the second Avengers movie. The third Iron Man movie was where he was having the panic attacks after what had happened in New York with the first.
Oh yeah,
right.
That's the Christmas movie.
You know,
Right.
yeah, the Christmas movie. So,
Yeah.
and the Mandarin, which people talked about as which they didn't actually bring to fruition very well, unfortunately. But that, I can see where if you're a fan of the comics, you would have hated that Mandarin. But anyone who's a real fan of the comics knows that it's not the real Mandarin. There's something else going on there. Like, the real Mandarin is off screen somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think they were going to do anything more with that, but the fans were outraged, so they had to.
Well, they did. They did Shang-Chi. That they brought the Mandarin in for Shang-Chi, but they completely changed the character. I didn't hear good things about it. I just know that that's where they finally tried to pick it up. The real Mandarin has nothing to do with Iron Man. He's fighting Shang-Chi instead for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a bit weird and odd, but I mean, it's comics. It's all different.
Well, it's funny. They took. I've heard so many people comment over the years that with the Phase 1 Marvel stuff, they took characters that they were plenty famous for Marvel, Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man, but they were not household names like Spider-Man was, for instance, or Superman or Batman. Most people didn't know them, and they turned it into a huge movie franchise, but past that, they really did start scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like, how many Shang-Chi has been around for a long time as a character, but how popular was he ever really? Was he really, the character that needed to have a movie made about him?
I mean, I thought it was a well movie. I think it was a matter of time. I mean, everyone loves Bruce Lee, and Shang-Chi was the comic book answer to Bruce Lee.
Yeah. Inspired by that.
So I mean,
there were a bunch of his comic books in that collection.
Shang-Chi. Yeah. There was a Bruce Lee pinup in one.
Yeah.
Hey, can I throw something there real quick? You forgot to mention one thing about ham radio, CW. That wasn't I enjoy very much.
Yeah, that's part of it.
So repeat that back for me. I did not catch all that.
That was Dan. He's helping us out with some space here. He had mentioned that we didn't talk about CW with the ham radio stuff. It's
Morse code.
It's Morse code. It's not something that's done a whole lot. Well, it is done a lot still, but it's not a requirement as part of the amateur radio stuff anymore.
Okay.
But believe it or not, it's making a very big comeback.
The Morse code is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, ever since they stopped it from being a requirement, not to start going down that rabbit hole too, but ever since they stopped it from being a requirement, more people are actually taking it.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
So more people are interested now that it's not required of them.
Yeah.
If that's not just yet another reason to get rid of public schools, I don't know what is. Kids will be more interested in reading if we tell them that, you don't have to read those books. Don't read those. That's a waste of time. Well, I want to read them now. Jane Austen, put that down. That's no good. You don't want that. Now, I wanted to, we're closing here on the 20 minutes left here, and I wanted to segue back to the gaming talk because we've been all over the place, particularly in the LARPing realm, because that's where Nemo and I have had the most experience together over the years. I know, Rykus, you haven't participated much in any LARPs that I'm aware of.
No.
But do you think you would have had you had the chance?
I don't think it's in my personality. I'm more of a anti-socialist kind of. I don't like large crowds, and LARPing seems.
Me too. I hate commies.
If there's 100 people in one room, I myself would try to find a way out of that room.
Right. Okay. Right.
I
Right.
tolerate it for conventions and things like that, just because I can focus in on. I need to find this comic book, this comic book, and this comic book, or I can just have tunnel vision and just kind of search through a long box of comics.
Right.
But I do have a panic thing that happens when I'm just in a room full of people, and I just it inhibits me of doing a lot of things.
The irony is that I very much felt the same way and thought there's no way I'm the kind of person that would get into this or be good at it. And yet it proved to be exactly the opposite. Many people who thought they would not like it at all or wouldn't care for it. And even people who were like they love D&D, but the thought of like dressing up in costume, that's just too weird and cross line for them. So many people who thought they wouldn't like it ended up really getting into it. Usually quite often people that you thought for sure would love it go and then you never see them again. But then people that you thought didn't like it or not having a good time, man, they come back game after game. You might be surprised. I even go so far as to say that I learned a lot of good, valuable social skills from getting into LARPing. It was my first time learning to talk and communicate with strangers and not make it, not just be a wallflower or clam up. I had to learn to express myself in a way.
Yeah. Also, I'm a bad actor. I don't. I don't. When
Most
I play
LARPers are. You're not supposed to be a good actor. You're just supposed to role play. Right.
Right.
So the key there is like if you can't do a German accent, don't play a character that requires a German accent. Right?
Yeah.
That's the stuff that you get around to. If you don't want to wear a tuxedo to every game, don't play a tuxedo wearing character.
Yeah, I've read a lot of poetry. I was one of my things as a when I was in school is I loved 1800s poetry. I was reading like Lord
Nerd!
Byron.
I mean, that's
Right.
very interesting. Please go on.
Edgar Allan Poe. So I knew the accent and the verbalism of like old timey characters. Like if I was going to play a vampire, I knew how to say it, but I couldn't verbally say it, and that would probably be an offset for me if I'm playing a vampire from the Victorian ages, and if I can't speak it, it would frustrate me because I'm somewhat of a perfectionist too. So if
You got to think of it from this perspective. You don't have to play a vampire from the Victorian ages, but you could play a modern vampire that is a scholar of the Victorian ages. So you don't have to actually speak the language, but you still come into the game having all the knowledge.
So the vampire game's not set in the it's set in the modern world.
Most modern One World by Night type games, Mind's Eye Theater games, are set modern. Yeah.
Okay.
Ultimately, vampire can be set in whatever historical period you want to do. It's never been done to my knowledge, but I've been thinking about it. It could even be set in the future on a spaceship in outer space.
Wow.
There's nothing that intrinsically ties it to any particular time period.
Yeah, most people just play it in the here and now, or at least all the games I've been involved in have been kind of like the here and now.
Most people, when I talk about LARPing, I imagine D&D, so medieval time, and then the most other common is vampires. So I'm thinking Victorian. Because I watched a lot of Anne Rice movies with Interview with the Vampire, Queen of the Damned, and things like that. So I imagine it'd be more in that time period or in the London area.
Look at I think I'm thinking Queen of the Damned. So you've got the old guy, the muscular Egyptian guy, right, from the original spoke uniform, blah 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 blah. He could still walk. He could walk in the day. None of the other vampires could, because he was an original vampire.
Right.
He was from back then, and he followed back then old school rules that he made up because he was the vampire. The newer vampires were more modern. The girl with the teeth, and they made the dogs, right? Those guys, those were Bruja, anarchs, blah blah blah. But they were modern, but they still had the knowledge from back then. They were trying to get the knowledge from that guy, right?
Right.
And then, as opposed to some of the other vampire movies where, what is it?
Yeah.
Is it Blade where they had the guy where they? No, it was still part of. Right, was it Blade?
I gotta jump in here because Velma put it. Not all vampires are cool. You could play a vampire that stutters or has social phobia. Like again, not every vampire is sexy, sparkly Edward Cullen. Some of them are downright ugly. And again, it being a much more immersive game world, they are open-minded to. You could be a very physically flawed person, disabled, handicapped, or something, but your mind and talent is so special that they would bring you across and make you one of them.
Okay, so another thing is I like a small group of people when I'm playing D&D, because not small, but anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6, maybe even 7 people. And if I stop to talk to a skeleton, it's not that bad because it's only in front of 7 people. If I try to talk or do something equally outrageous in the vampire, I got 100 people laughing at me, and that's kind of that's brutal.
Well, I can say that the things that you think would embarrass you in that setting probably would not. And you might be surprised at what you would do. You might be surprised. I did want to take a minute, and I wanted to shout out Shadow City, which was recently released by the Chubby Funster, who has been a previous guest on the show. But this is a vampire game that's built on the Shadow Dark framework, which is essentially D20 D&D. And it is a tabletop-oriented game. And if you don't want all the cumbersome lore and rules and everything that comes with the World of Darkness, we have a lighter alternative that is still quite the beefy experience that really captures the same unlike nightlife that the other games do. Go ahead.
I watched that episode just a little bit back.
Did you? Yeah, he was really neat, and we got to talk a lot about our LARPing experience at that time. It was very keen. It was very keen. So now, Nemo, you joined my LARP, 98, 99, somewhere around that one. So it goes back quite a long way. What was that first night like for you?
That first night hooked me. I actually kind of knew what I was getting into when I showed up. I actually had gone out, that trench coat I was wearing, I believe that was the first character I brought in, right?
I kind of vaguely recall that. You cut an imposing figure in a trench coat.
Yeah. So that trench coat, I actually went shopping for that trench coat. I spent some time trying to figure out that character, and my first impression was, oh my goodness, this place is too small for all these people. But
how many people were there?
That
was
a problem I did not expect to have really ever, let alone so early.
So I believe my first character there was called Adam Wide, and I actually got his name from a pack of cigarettes, and he was supposed to be a Columbo character. But he was a Columbo character that had been embraced and programmed to go find vampires and turn the information over to vampire hunters. He wasn't actually supposed to do any of the damage to the vampires himself. He was just supposed to bring back the information as to where they were. And he was an actual detective. And back then, there was this thing and I spent a long time. I spent probably 2 weeks figuring it out before I actually showed up to the game. So the name came from a pack of cigarettes because I was trying to figure out a name, and that's why his name was Adam Wide. Because back then I spoke Camel Wide, and on the pack of camels, if you read a pack of camels, there's an acronym there, right? So camels are, can Adam make Eve love like Eve makes Adam do something with the seed? And we will let your audience imagine that. So as I'm staring there, I'm like, that's it. His name is Adam White. That's how I came up with the character name. And but the concept was basically Columbo going in there. Well, of course, I got busted by every vampire clan right away.
To my recollection, I tried to dissuade you from that character concept. I was like, that's just not going to work, man. You're going to get caught real quick. That was the seed of the notion that I mentioned during that Chubby Funster show, which is that, you know what? You did something so bad, even you don't know what happened to you. You just disappear overnight. No one knows what happened to you, not even you.
But I figured if it was a game I wasn't going to take seriously, then it gave me the easy out. And if it was a game I was going to take seriously, then I would have a challenge playing the character. So I figured that was the way to go. But I think it was probably the third game that I showed up to where there was a group of Sabbat. I believe it was the Sabbat and the Prince, and the Prince was out giving he gave a big speech on the balcony to the rest of the vampires below, and I don't remember if it was really Sabbat necessarily, but I believe there was some mixed in with them, and the Prince of the city, and I believe you were the NPCing the Prince at the time, gave out edicts, and the entirety of the city below, minus the court, which was standing behind you, said no and took a step forward.
Yeah.
And that night, I said, okay, I want to be a part of this game a lot more seriously. And I started coming up with better character ideas.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that was part of my learning curve early on, or those early times I was being an NPC and trying to provide the structure for what we were setting up. Because again, our crazy experiment at that time was having a game where you could have both Camarilla and Sabbat players in the same game. There was not a Sabbat game to be found anywhere, and actually for a lot of valid reasons, nobody wants to run a dedicated Sabbat game. But we wanted to make that option available. We wanted people in our game to be able to play anything from the main book. So if you want to play that weird little bloodline, this is the place you come to do it. We wanted to give that opportunity. It was early on though, where I was still doing the classic sort of DM mindset of, oh, I need a story, I need a plot, I need an adventure, I need something for them to do. And I kept coming up with plots for the players to interact with. And it was within the first year that I realized that, I don't need to do that. I can be completely hands off. And all the ideas and plans that the players come up with are way more interesting than anything I can come up with myself.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the things about running a game that large, because I think when I did Legends of Darkness, that game was pushing 50 people on a regular basis too, and yes, I started plot lines. In fact, I actually had to tell my STs, stop pushing plot lines because the characters are doing enough.
yeah, we can't keep up with everything. Stuff has gone by the wayside. Because again, the normal thing, the common plot line, like you do in D&D, is you go the time bomb, whatever it is. If there's something ticking in the background, and if the players don't catch on and stop it, the world ends, or whatever it is. And then they don't do anything about it, and you go, "Oh crap! I gotta end the world now." I said all this. I gotta end the world. What am I gonna do? How am I gonna run a game? So that happened to me once, and you know what I did? I killed everybody. I killed everybody in the game, and we all started over, and that's when you joined.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, before you did, it was when we had a 15-page game.
You're not playing against sort of the DM like you are with the tabletop game. You're playing against the kind of not against, but alongside with and against all the other. It
is all player driven action, but they are not always friendly. There's going to be competing factions of players, and those cliques and stuff evolve naturally once you get large enough groups. There is a current trend in the groups, the old school gamers that I talk with online. They talk a lot about these Bronsteins. Any bros listening to this, sound off. But they have discovered a lot of the same concepts, that PvP invigorates their games in ways that the DM himself couldn't come up with, rather than the DM trying to figure out, this is what the dragon is doing, or this is what the orc is doing over there, and the goblins up in the hills are doing this, and this is what's happening in the world. The DMs just let the players do their things, and the world comes to life with very little effort. They're more moderating and mediating than they are any sort of creative work.
It seems very overwhelming.
Yeah, you know what? It can be, and that's part of what makes it so addictive, because at the end of any given LARP night, any game night, people, if you ask me, so what happened tonight? I don't know. 99% of everything that happened tonight happened out of my view, right?
Right.
Or I can give broad strokes because I have people running to me all night going, "Hey, did you see what I just did to this guy?" You know.
Well, that's why, like, assistant STs, assistant storytellers, DMs, whatever you want to call them, are so important in that situation, because I found that the best ratio is like 1 to every like 20 players ish, 1 to every 15 players ish, depending on how heavy the action was that night. There were a couple guys that I was like, okay, you're not an ST, but I'll let you referee like physical stuff, so I don't have to keep going back to referee physical stuff. But
Right.
but you have other people that help you keep plot line straight. So
after the game, do you get like minutes or something? Or
yeah,
after
the game, usually there's a rundown after every game that everybody is involved in, and then after you kick everybody out, then the storytellers, the people who are running the business, sit down, kind of go over everything that they remember happened. But even they missed them. We missed them.
There's too much going on that no one person has everything, and that's part of the fun too, is comparing notes with people after the fact, because two people can have completely different stories about any given night. For one person, it was one of the best nights they ever had, and for another one, it was their entire undead life fell apart on that. Their unlife. And one of the interesting things too is that level of immersion still causes those players that they get so into the characters that they're much more prone to come up with goals. They come up naturally. You get to thinking about, like, if we were doing a superhero LARP and I cast you as Wolverine, right? How long would you have to play before you start thinking like, oh, well, this is what Wolverine would do in this situation. Oh, I just saw somebody try to kidnap a woman. What would Wolverine do? The vampire character you're playing, you get to know in the same way. You get this sort of a gut instinct for, I wouldn't act at all. I would act completely different, but my character would do exactly this. He would intercede. He would get violent. He would get loud, or he would, do absolutely nothing.
He would hit himself over the head with an excavator and bury himself in the ground with a remote control so that he could drink his own blood and dig his way out, so that he could be the only Sabbat in the city that was true to the cause.
It sounds like you're describing everything that D&D is. You inhabit the character, you become that character, you role play that character, but you're not acting it. You're tabletop. Acting it.
Yeah. So LARPing definitely does encourage theatrical elements. So people who can act, or people who can kind of do a cool accent or neat voice or enjoy the costumes, the room is there for that to take place. But it's by no means a requirement. People who aren't in any of that still get into the games and are very successful at them. Minimal costuming, no real acting chops or anything like that. They just enjoy playing the character and taking part in the scenes that they get offered. All right, gentlemen, we are at the 1 minute mark, so we need to wrap things up here.
All right.
Where can people find you if they want to know more?
Find us on our YouTube channel, Ashtabula Hobby Talk. And we have a Facebook page also, Ashtabula Hobby Talk.
You can find me at Captain's Comics in North Kingsville, Ohio, corner of Route 20 and 193.
If you're interested in amateur radio, you can look up Amigos Radio Club Ashtabula. We are Amigos Radio Club Ashtabula. I believe we're .net or .org. I can't remember, but we do have a website out there. And there is some contact information on there. I don't do a very good job of updating it, but I'm working on it.
And by our powers combined, we are Ashtabula Hobby Talk. And
Brilliant.
Andrew, too, who's not here right now, but.
And yeah, Andrew, thank you. He was in the chat. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making time to come on here and talk with me tonight. It was a real pleasure having you. Good mix of nostalgia, good mix of gaming, good mix of pop culture stuff. So let's do this again.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate talking to you, Jack.
You bet it. All right. And to my loyal Goblin audience, thank you for tuning in for yet another installment of Jawin with Jack. See me next week. I'm coming back with another interesting guest. I don't actually remember who off the top of my head. I need to consult my calendar. But, that's the way my brain kind of works. In any case, I'll see you next Monday